Hello, BCTians. A very good evening and good morning to one and all present in this session today. I'm Divya Kumar, your host for the day. I lead the talent engagement group, part of human resources team. I'm very excited to meet you today. As BCT Group successfully completes 22 years, we take great pride in congratulating each and every one of you who have contributed to our evolution and growth. A round of applause before we begin. And, and with this happy occasion, we are glad to launch Charge, BCT's Life Series. This is a series of talks by renowned speakers that aim to transform you with hope, health, and positivity for a brighter and more inspired life and career. And for today's session, we have Dr. David Patnaik. Many of us knew him already, and I'm equally excited as you. Dr. Pattanaik writes on relevance of mythology in modern times, trained in medicine, worked for 15 years in the healthcare and pharma industries before he plunged in full-time into his passion. Today, he's an author of 50 books and 1,000 columns, several with bestsellers, and he's known for his TED Talks, his TV shows, especially Devdutt, and his innovative views on culture, leadership, and Indian approach to management. Dr. Patnaik, it's an honor to have your session exclusively wired for BCTians today. Welcome, sir. And the topic for today is post-pandemic leadership. Before we begin, I would request our COO, Mr. Mike Muralidharan, to set the context.
Yeah, very good evening and welcome to you, Dr. David Patnaik. In fact, I've listened to you on many occasions, so to say, at least 4 or 5 occasions. And every time you have enthralled me, and I'm sure you'll enthrall the entire audience with your views. The one thing which I simply say is that you say there is nothing called black and white in this world. There's always going to be shades of gray. And as long as we accept that reality and probably align ourselves with those gray or whatever shades that is, then we can be, living the life much better in this world. That's what I got from you. But beyond that, amazing. I would not like to take the wind out of your sails, but I would love to listen to you along with the rest of the people. And again, congratulations to all of us BCTians for this 22 years of existence, and look forward to going to greater places. And best way to start is with Dr. Devdutt Patnaik. Welcome, sir. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. So I'm just want to be sure that I'm visible and I'm audible. Nowadays we need to do this just to be sure. So I'd like to just clarify if I can be audible and visible.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're visible and audible.
Thank you.
We can.
Thank you so much. It's dark, so we need some light. I like the title Charge that you have used as for your leadership workshops, and the symbol of the sun. And one of the simplest definitions of a leader is, I always tell, if you walk into someone's room and you come back energized, then he's the leader. If it's a black hole, you enter the room and you feel completely de-energized and you feel completely broken and shattered and you come out feeling more lost than when you were entering, then you have not met a leader. So the simple definition, if in our lives, is a leader is someone who energizes us, enables us to do our job well. And that's a simple definition. And I think that logo of yours sort of, provoked that thought. I usually don't begin by talking about this, but I saw that logo and I said, I must say this because it's a very simple thing. When you are down and you're not feeling energized, you pick up the phone and talk to someone. Many people have this open door policy in their cabins. And I always tell people, do you see actually people walking in through the open doors? Or are they avoiding the open door? And that reveals what kind of a leader are you. Do you attract people towards you, talent towards you, or do they shun you because you take energy away from them rather than giving them energy? And the sun as a metaphor for leadership is also very powerful because it also reminds us that the sun, around the sun, there are planets. And there are different planets moving at different speeds with each other. And they are each in their own orbit, which is exactly how a team is. A team is full of people, each in its own orbit. Everybody is doing their own thing, but they revolve around the team leader. And it is the team leader who is giving them the energy. And in India, there is this concept of Navagraha. So you have, and I always look at Navagraha and I say that, it's a simple way of understanding diversity. We're in June and everybody's talking about diversity, inclusion, but look at the Navagraha, and that's a very good way of understanding diverse mental makeups. Some people are like the sun, always radiant, but if you get too close to them, you can get scorched. So you stay a little, you keep your distance from them. Then there are some people like the moon who are waxing and waning as the days pass. Their moods change. They're very moody. Some days they're very positive. Some days they're very negative. And you have to manage them accordingly. Some people are like Mars, always aggressive, always fighting, always... we use the management word assertive. We don't use the word aggressive, but they are, they're ready for a fight, who get energized by conflict, who love conflict. And I'm sure as I'm saying this, you're thinking of people in your team, right? There is, Wednesday is associated with Mercury. So Mercury, people who are mercurial, you just don't know how to fix them. They're very good in communication. They are very smart with words. They know exactly how to get out of a tough situation with words. Very useful in sales and communications to manage clients. Then there are people who are like the planet Jupiter, wise, good with numbers, good with data, good with but just can't communicate. Therefore, they need the help of Mercury to communicate. There are some people who are like very creative, marketing teams like Venus. So Venus is creative, and you suddenly find this very different idea of someone who is highly creative. And Shukracharya in Indian mythology is the guru of the Asuras, and Brahaspati or Jupiter is the guru of the Devas. And we realize both of them are important because the guru of the Devas is very mathematical and rational, but that's not all. We also need the emotional side, the creative side, the intuitive side, which is Shukracharya. And you find that all the time. So someone who does creative visualization and thinks of the future and can think out of the box is someone who has what I call the Friday or the Venus personality. And then you have, of course, you need someone who is very strict about checklists and systems and orders, and that is the Brihaspati personality. And then you have, of course, the Saturn personality, who's reminding you that the time is coming to an end, the project is going to come to an end tomorrow, you better finish your work. Till the last minute doesn't work, and suddenly at the last minute he works very hard, which is a very strong Indian trait. And of course, then there is Rahu and Ketu. Rahu is associated with eclipsing everyone. He comes into the room and everybody feels down and out. And then there is the eternally nervous and stressed out Ketu, like a comet moving constantly, always nervous, always frightened. And the sun as the leader has to handle all these kind of different things. We do all these various Myers-Briggs tests and all to find personality. But a simple way of understanding personality is just map your friends to the 9 planets, the grahas and the celestial bodies. And you suddenly realize, oh, this is that type. And you don't have unrealistic expectations from them. You don't have unrealistic because you know who they are. If it's a moon, they can't be the sun. If they are Mercury, they can't be Jupiter. If they're Jupiter, they can't be Venus. Venus will not be Saturn. You cannot make a Ketu a Rahu, or you can't make a Rahu into a Surya. So the idea is that we deal with different personalities. We deal with different ways of thinking. In the Jyotisha Shastra, when you are reading the Shastra, they will always talk about, in horoscope, there'll be house, various zodiacs, and you will talk of constellations. And I say they are like your departments, various departments that you have to manage. And in every department, you will have different planets working. In effect, when you look at your horoscope, you realize it's like an organizational chart. You have the sun, the moon, the Mercury, Venus, Mars, different people in different departments. And as a good leader, you have to manage them all. You have to energize them all. You have to make sure that they're not clashing into each other. You want to make sure that you're not being driven towards a black hole. You want to make sure that occasionally there will be an eclipse. Somebody was going to come in somebody's way and destroy their glory. And there will be times when there will be kinds of storms created because the planets are not in alignment. You will have conflict between departments and conflict between planets. And that's life. That's how life is. So long as you understand that as a leader, I am the sun and I have to orchestrate this movement, and I cannot do their job. The leader cannot do the sun cannot do however bright the sun is, it cannot do the job of Mercury. It cannot do the job of Jupiter. It cannot do the job of Venus. It cannot be Ketu. It can't be Rahu. It has to be with everyone. They're all going around him. And I think this is a good metaphor to use in your leadership workshops. When we talk of leadership, and it's in times of crisis, and this is COVID has been a crisis, but in the IT sector, of course, it has a different kind of crisis. It's created opportunities, new ways of working from home has become the norm and will be the norm, and it will change the way we look at organizations in the future. And the thing about this period is it reminds me of a story from the Bible, the Old Testament, Noah's Ark. Now, Noah's Ark is a story that you find in the Old Testament. It talks about a great flood which comes, and Noah builds a ship. And on the ship, all kinds of animals. He took one pair of animals from earth to survive this great flood. And after many, many days of being storm tossed, it was raining outside, and he didn't know where it will end and when it will end. And that's in a way what COVID was, right, for all of us. We all were locked up in our houses in different parts of the world, wondering when it will all end. We still don't know. We know that the end is near, somewhere near, but you're always terrified of a new variant coming and changing things. You don't know whether it will be travel internationally. Everyone has not had vaccinations. We are still a little careful and wary, but we are all on that arc. And remember, many people were staying with their families. Imagine for 8 hours you were going away to office. Those 8 hours were liberty for many members of your family. That liberty went away because they are going to see you 24/7, which led to a lot of adjustments. Parents had to see their children 24/7, which was not necessarily welcome. And husbands had to see their wives 24/7, again, not necessarily welcome. Parents-in-law and children-in-law in the same space, parents and children in the same space, friends 24/7 together, sitting on the same room, sharing the same Wi-Fi, having conversations with different bosses, maybe members of the same department staying in the same house, gossiping about the boss. And then suddenly you have CEOs who were posting photographs of how to wash vessels. And because for the first time in their life, they realize life has to go on. The maids will not come to your house. The staff will not come into your house. And suddenly you realize that life is difficult, and you realize what it is to be on Noah's Ark. Because Noah's Ark is where different kinds of animals are living together. The predator and the prey, the ally, the rival. So the fox is there with the hare, is there with the jackal, is with the hyena and the tiger and the goat and the deer and the sheep and the camel. And they are all on the boat. And you are sitting in the house and saying, okay, that is a dog personality, constantly barking, needs attention, wags his tail when happy. Oh, that's a dog because when upset starts whining. And that's a cat who only comes to me and decides when he wants to be loved. And you suddenly realize that every member of your family has its own personality. And as a leader, you have to make sure that the dog and the cats don't fight each other, and the tiger and the deer can live together. And suddenly you realize what leadership is in a different cramped space. And that's what the pandemic teaches us. How do you manage people? The bottom line is, whether you're talking about the sun or you're talking about Noah's Ark, you are essentially talking about living together and managing diverse people to achieve a common goal. And that's the biggest challenge. How do you get people with diverse skill sets, diverse strengths, weaknesses, diverse opportunities and threats, each one living in their own ecosystem, to coordinate and work with each other in order to create the goal that you desire? How do you become the sun? How do you become Noah? Knowing fully, you can't tell the dog behave like a cat. You can't tell the cat behave like a dog. You can't tell the deer that from tomorrow you don't have to fear the tiger. And you can't tell the tiger, okay, now you have to become vegetarian. It doesn't work like that. Instructions don't work. You have to work with people's capabilities, strengths, and weaknesses and figure out ways of aligning with each other. It becomes tougher when you're not physically sitting together. It becomes tougher when you are sitting at home and you know that suddenly when you're talking to your boss, you also have to prepare the dinner because your wife also works, and you can't expect, the gender roles have changed. Everybody has to work together. Suddenly kitchen responsibilities, toilet cleaning responsibilities, children's responsibilities have now come to each other. And those challenges is something we never dealt with. And now the new world is emerging. Slowly the COVID will come to an end. And when COVID comes to an end, the question before us is, will we still respect our staff? Will we still respect the Wi-Fi? Will we still respect what it means to living in cramped spaces? Will we empathize with others in the organization? Some people have large houses where everyone can afford a separate room. Some people have small houses and have to stay together. Will there be a greater empathy towards work-life balance? Will there be a greater empathy of gender roles at home and at work? The world is changing. And many people don't realize that those old gender roles don't apply. Those old hierarchies don't apply. Everything is changing. The rules of marriage are changing. The rules of child management is changing. The rules of leadership are changing. It is not about I command and control as in the army. Even in the army, that is changing. I give a lot of lectures to army people and I keep telling them things are changing. The new world order is changing. And change is the constant. So in a changing ecosystem where we really don't know where we are going, what is the things that we should focus on that enables us to continue to be great leaders? And I would like to take you to this heart situation. What should Noah focus on? What should the son focus on if he wants to be a great leader? And this does not change anywhere in the world ever. And this is very fundamental. It's in many ways related to our biology, our physiology, our psychology. And you have to go on this journey with me. You have to go on a journey with me. You have to understand, when you are looking at the world, how do we look at the world? So step away from the world of your IT and your regular work. Just step away and try to understand how the world emerged. So in the beginning, we know of the Big Bang, right? We know of the Big Bang, which happened 13 billion years ago. We know that because we all watch Big Bang Theory and we've been hearing that song over and over and over again. So 13 billion years ago, the world began, yes. And about 5 billion years ago, the planet Earth began. And then a few billion years ago, microorganisms emerged. A few million years ago, plants and animals started to appear. What was the fundamental difference between a non-living object and a living organism? What is the fundamental difference is the question you have to ask. A non-living object is never hungry. It doesn't look for food. A living organism seeks food. So in your house, if you have a plant and a rock, you have to make sure the plant has got sunlight, it has water, otherwise it will die. The rock doesn't die. The living organism needs food, it needs nourishment. Therefore, the leaves are there on a tree, therefore it has roots. And that is the thing to remember. Why are birds flying? They're not flying for fun. They're flying because they're looking for food. The crow, the sparrow, the eagle, the dog, the cat, everything that you see around you, all movement of living organisms is in search of food. And then you say that if all animals are looking for food, all plants are looking for food, is that why they move? And what is the result of them looking for food? And realize lots of things happen. So plants are eating inorganic elements, right? They're eating sunlight and they're eating water and they're eating nutrients. But animals are eating plants and animals are eating animals. Now, if an animal goes to a plant and says, I want to eat you, the plant doesn't want to be eaten. And therefore it produces thorns. Or it produces, the spices that we eat for flavoring our food is actually toxins produced by plants to prevent animals from eating them. So no plant wants to be eaten. It is frightened of being consumed, and therefore it creates thorns and toxins to protect itself. Or blades of grass which grew on the ground transformed into trees. That's how shrubs emerge, and finally trees, to keep the leaves out of reach from the various animals that fed on grass. But then, of course, nature created the giraffe. And the giraffe could reach any blade of grass, any leaf, anywhere. So you suddenly realize that when you study the natural ecosystem, when you study the world of plants and study the world of animals and microorganisms, all living creatures eat and are eaten. So there is hunger for food and there is fear of the predator of being consumed. So I consume and I can be consumed. And that is how nature functions. Nature is surrounded by these two forces, hunger and fear. And that will explain why various animals form groups. So why do you have a herd of deer, or why do you have a pack of wolves? And when you understand this, you start understanding organizational behavior. Why do people form groups? We form groups because as a group, there is a greater chance of us finding food. As a group, there is a greater chance of us surviving and protecting ourselves. Effectively, it is hunger and fear which is driving us. Humans are different from the rest of nature because we possess imagination at a scale that no animal possesses. We have a very large brain, and because we can imagine, our hunger is amplified 1,000 times because we can think of tomorrow's hunger, day after tomorrow's hunger, and our fears are amplified. You know, a deer gets frightened when it sees a tiger, smells a tiger, hears a tiger, but we can imagine a tiger all the time. And therefore, our quest for resources and our quest for security is unimaginable. We get bored. We get bored like nothing. We want to be entertained all the time. And therefore, we are constantly seeking entertainment. We're seeking stimulation. These are human traits, very strong. We produce games. We produce games to entertain us, and films and stories and entertainment to entertain. But most importantly, we are looking for meaning. As an imaginary being, we can imagine things, we can imagine the world without us. And we realize that without us, the world will continue. And that makes us wonder, hey, what value do I bring to this world? Why do I exist? And these three things, hunger, fear, and meaning, are the things that all human beings look for, whether it's a pandemic or not. This is 24/7 for eternity. All living organisms or humans look for food to satisfy their hunger, look for security to take care of their fear, and they're looking for meaning. If you don't get meaning, at least you don't want to be bored. So you want to be busy. And if you understand these three principles, what I call in Hindu mythology, Lakshmi, Saraswati, Durga. So if you want to remember this, LSD. So Lakshmi, Saraswati, Durga, which is what we work for, right? We work for Lakshmi because it nourishes us. We work for Durga because she makes us feel secure. And we work for Saraswati because we're looking for meaning, or if not meaning, we want to not be bored. So we play Ludo and Solitaire and anything to keep our minds between jobs so that we don't have to deal with the question, what value do I bring to this world? What value do I bring to my life? Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Durga, the three goddesses of India, effectively, it's a way of understanding. It's a framework. You know, mythology is just the map of the human mind, and different cultures use different maps to deal with life. And India created this map and said that, you know what, whether it's a pandemic, in any situation, remember this. Every human being is looking for food, is looking for security, and is looking for meaning. And as a leader, your job is to ensure that people get these basic needs, and you do it in a collaborative ecosystem where because everybody's needs are different, their strengths are different, their weaknesses are different, their opportunities are different, the threats to their jobs are different. They're all insecure, they may lose their jobs. They're all insecure that will they get their salaries on time, will they get the bonus, will they get their promotion, will they be treated fairly. And every time March approaches, suddenly you'll see the anxiety levels rise because it is about appraisal and who gets promoted and who gets more than less. And the quest for meaning. Am I valued as much as my friends, or are my friends really my friends? And who gets more valued? And that creates deep anxiety in human beings, and a leader is aware of it. So it's not just about task orientation or target orientation or working with friends and getting the agenda and getting the things done. It's not just about system management and change management and growth management. It is also about stress management. It is about dealing with people's irrational fears. You may say, Devdutt, it's not rational, but humans are not rational. We are emotional creatures who rationalize life. And a good leader recognizes this. He uses emotions, he can manipulate emotions, he plays with emotions, he calms emotions, he's aware of emotions. A good leader is aware of that side. So this world of tasks and targets is great and it's important, and that's what gets you your goals. But at the end of the day, we're human beings. We are intelligent creatures. Artificial intelligence does not need a bonus. Humans do. We need appreciation. We need praise. We don't like being insulted. We don't like being ghosted. We like when we send a message, someone to reply to us because it means we are alive and we matter. And therefore, when you are a leader and you're dealing with a crisis, do not lose focus of these three things. Do not lose focus of Lakshmi, Durga, and Saraswati. As I said, LSD, simple way of remembering. I know it's a little cheesy and corny, but you'll never forget it once I've said it. And that's the power of it. You remember these things. You have to remember. And when you remember, and of course, it's a complex subject. I've just made it very simple, but it becomes more difficult because when you ask about what is Lakshmi, and then you break it down further and further and further. What nourishes you may not nourish, what nourishes a Brihaspati will not nourish a Shukracharya. Or if you ask Durga, what is security? What is security? Somebody says security is certainty. Some people certainty, somebody will say that assurance. So you have different things that sort of can nourish you and make you feel secure. And there are different things that can give you meaning. And leader's job is to recognize that. And therefore, one of the Indian concepts that I keep talking about is the concept of darshan. You know, when you walk into a temple, you will say that the gods have these large eyes. And you have to supposed to look into the eye and the God looks back at you. This is the concept of darshan. Darshan means I see you and you see me. This line, I don't know if you've seen this film called Avatar, which is the American version of saying Avatar, is basically keeps using this line, I see you and you see me. Do I see you? This is darshan. And darshan is a very interesting idea in leadership. It means I see not just the tasks that you have done. I don't see just the targets that you have done. I see you. I see your ambitions. I see your frustrations. I see your pain. I see your joy. I'm aware of your jealousies. I'm aware of your greed, and I know how to work with it. That is darshan, to see the other. And that is a quality that leaders must develop. We somewhere focus, especially in the where we are working from home and we see each other through a screen, that becomes tougher. Because how do we have those private? What is missing in this pandemic? All these online sessions. We are missing the coffee breaks. We are missing the loo breaks. We are missing the gossip sessions we have with friends in the corridors. That informal network, which is the life of an organization, is missing. And in the new world order, when we will not have these things, how do we create those ecosystems? How do we create times when we'll meet each other informally and chat with each other? A leader cannot grow without informal conversations with his team. Having the chai together, having the lunch together, having the break together, because that's where you figure people out and figure out how to work with them. How do you take those tough decisions? How do you make those critical decisions? How do you criticize people you like? How do you praise people you don't like? How do you do that? How do you recognize them? One of the things to remember, and that's a very famous story from the Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, both the Kauravas and the Pandavas go to Krishna and they say that we want you to support us. And Krishna says, I'll divide myself into two parts. On one side is me without weapons. On the other side are all my weapons and my army. Tell me, what do you choose? And we are told the Kauravas chose the army and the weapons, and Pandavas chose Krishna. And I always ask this question in workshops, what will you choose if you're given a choice? And everybody, of course, gives the standard answers. Of course, we'll choose Krishna. And I said, is that really true? Because look at the story very carefully. It divides the human being into two parts. It divides people into what I am and what I have. I am and I have. And look at how we engage with each other in a corporate or professional ecosystem. Do I see you or do I see your skills? Do I see you or do I see your achievements? Do I see you or your experience? Do I see you or your wallet? What do I see? And that's the question we have to ask ourselves. When darshan is about recognizing the value of both, what I am and what I have. I am hungry, frightened, curious, bored. I have wealth, power, skills, experience, achievements. And if you separate this in human beings and see them and you ask yourself, hey, what am I looking for and what I am? you know how to negotiate people better. It's a very powerful framework to have. Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Durga fall in the have categories, what I have. But what I am is a very different conversation. It is my hunger, my fear, my yearning for validation and meaning. And the leader must, as you grow higher and higher and higher in the hierarchy, you move away from looking at what you have to what you are. And there's a Jain framework. The Jains created this framework. The Jains were a fascinating people, and they still are the most powerful economic force in our country. And the Jain mythology has this concept that time is constantly flowing from good times to bad times. So, and it is constantly going in Shushama, Shushama, and Dushama, Dushama. That means boom and bust, boom and bust. These were traders, right? Most of the Jain merchants, they were merchants, they were traders, and they understood the market keeps going through cyclical forces. You become complacent, market goes down. You become confident and you work hard, the market goes up. Sometimes the monsoons are good, the markets are good. Monsoons are bad, the markets are bad. And therefore, their concept of time included the idea of crisis and terrifying things like the pandemic, which nobody had planned for. And how do you adjust to this ecosystem? And the Jains said that a great man follows three axes. The first axis is the Vasudeva axis, where he focuses on targets and tasks. And that's what makes him great. He focuses on targets, he focuses on tasks. But as he evolves further, he develops a second axis. And the second axis is called the Chakravarti axis. The Chakravarti, look at the word Chakra. It has a two-dimensional view of things. The Vasudeva is like holding a bow in his hand, shooting an arrow, very focused. But as you grow, the focus is replaced by perspective. And you start thinking of the large number of people, of departments, of shareholders. You start thinking about employees and customers, not just your task, not just your target, not just what you want to achieve, but you start thinking of the organization. That is how you grow in an organization. But the third axis is often missing, and that is the Tankara axis. This axis is where you start looking at people and life at a larger level, where you look at people as belonging to ecosystem of life, of the world. You start recognizing the I am and the I have division. You start connecting with people at a very personal level. That's where magic happens, because then you become much better at your work, because you understand that your insecurity is shared by others. Your confidence is sought by others. You realize that as the sun, you decide how the planets will move. It is you who create the gravitational force. It is you who ensures how things are constantly aligning themselves. You are the Noah on the ark. You prevent the animals from fighting and killing each other. You maintain order and wait for the storm to pass, for the flood to pass. You manage people while they go about doing their jobs. So that journey from Vasudev to Chakravarti, to walking the path of the Tirthankara, just walking that path of recognizing humans as much more than mere workers or service providers or just colleagues and allies and rivals, but looking at them as a human being, doing darshan and having a 360-degree view of things, so that you become a better leader and you know exactly how to work with the other. Now that's the great challenge that we have before us. That's how you understand leadership. So leadership begins at very simple levels. You can see it in nature. You can, as I said, you can see it in the stars and the planets and the celestial bodies. You can see leadership in the transformation of objects into organisms. You can see leadership in plants and animals. All this is not to be negated. It's the human being sits on top of this because of our brain, and we can sort of see things at a different angle. I mean, I always tell people, look at the plant and ask yourself, do I have leaves which nourish me? Do I have thorns to protect myself? And do I provide fruits and flowers that bring value to the ecosystem? Because that's how we bring value to the ecosystem. We produce flowers and fruit. And look at the magical thing about flowers and fruits. A flower contains nectar, and the bee comes and takes the nectar. You're giving them nectar, but in exchange, you are being pollinated. So it's a give and take relationship. It's an exchange which happens so spontaneously that neither even realizes that they're benefiting each other. And that's a great thing to achieve. It is the concept. This is where the concept of yajna comes from. The yajna ritual, which we see in television serials nowadays, and we perform and we give it exotic meaning, really comes from a Sanskrit phrase which says, Dehi ma dadami te. Give me as I give you. So it's talking about exchange. So flower gives nectar, and exchange gets pollination. Or look at the fruit. The fruit is eaten by a monkey or any animal, and they take the seeds and plant it elsewhere so that the tree survives. The tree knows it's going to die one day, but the seed will germinate somewhere and it will outlive and outsmart death. And therefore, there is a give and take relationship in the flower and the fruit, which is missing in the leaves, in the roots, in the thorns. That's for survival. But thriving is when you fruit flowers, when you produce the fruits. So you have to ask yourself, am I surviving or am I thriving? Am I focusing only on the leaves of my life and the thorns of my life? Or am I also producing those flowers? Am I also producing those fruits? Am I enabling the next generation of talent? Am I creating a world that will be great even when I go away? Because we all have an expiry date. Expiry date, not just in our life, but our jobs. After 3 years, it's time for you to go to the next job and to the next job and to the next job. Have you created people who will do your job so that you go to the next job? So when you talk about punarjanma, it is not about punarjanma is about dying as your physical death, but also your organizational death. You are not going to be an executive all your life. You're not going to be a manager all your life. You're not going to be a supervisor all your life or a team leader all your life. You will keep moving from job to job, from team to team. And do you create enough resources to replace you? Do you prepare yourself for a changing ecosystem? Are you out there enabling people who can handle change? Are you one of those? Are you like the Tirthankara who is able to see the change and shifts of time, which the Chakravarti cannot see because he's trying to stabilize things? He has no clue that a great flood is coming and a ship has to be built. And that is how you grow. You move from a tactical mindset to a strategic mindset, from a focused mindset to a far more perspective of life. And that's the growth journey that leaders need to have. I, of course, use a cultural ecosystem to explain things. And there are many ways of understanding leadership. But this is what mythology teaches you. And this is what I've tried to share with you in the last 40 minutes. We can have now question answers. And if you have any clarity on this topic, please focus on this topic. We can just have an engagement for the next 20 minutes. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, David. And we are open for Q&A now as well, and any other thoughts. So we do have a question here in our chat window. How do I realize if the value I'm producing, I'm producing really is worthy? Because what is worthy for me may not be worthy for others. So how do I validate it?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Of course, it's very specific to your jobs, but let me explain how I validate it. And I'll give you analogies and see whether it works for you. So remember, I use this line, Dehi ma dadami te. I give and I want what I want what I give. So there is a continuous exchange. And really all relationships are about exchange. You're continuously giving things. And you have to ask yourself, am I giving things of value? Right? Because if you're giving things of value, you're getting things back of value. And that exchange is happening. So let us take an example of a temple. Right? So people go to a temple in India, and they carry a prasad or they carry a thali with gifts. You never enter a temple without carrying some bhog. So you'll always carry and give something, and you expect the deity in the temple to give you something in return, a prasad. So you give and you don't go just for, it's not a tourist visit. It is definitely an agenda-based visit. How much ever people will say that, no, I don't want anything in life except peace of mind. But you want peace of mind. You want something from the deity in the temple. And the deity knows that because he's doing darshan. And now ask yourself, which is the most popular temples in India? They're temples where wishes are fulfilled. So a temple where the wishes are fulfilled they're most popular. What does the popularity mean purely in mathematical terms? It means the person whose wishes are fulfilled comes back. In management, it is called a repeat order. So you get a repeat order. And then when the message wishes are fulfilled again and again, you tell your relatives also to go to the temple. That's called referral. So now ask yourself, how many people give you repeat orders and how many people refer you? And you will know whether you're bringing value to the table. That's the simple way of knowing. The gods know it, you learn it from the gods. Every temple is under pressure to perform. And you are constantly giving value if you're giving value to people, you will be in high demand. You will see people walking through the open door of your office. You will see the calls coming to you. People want, and that's how you create that you bring value to the table, because there is a demand in the market. And you're always in a marketplace. Nature is a marketplace. There are buyers and sellers everywhere. We are just using words. Words don't matter. These are just words. But you find them in nature all the time. The flower does not produce nectar, fragrance, color. The bees won't come to it. It won't survive. You have to produce that nectar. If you are not producing nectar, fragrance, you won't get the bees coming to you. So that's how you validate it. So that was the question. Let me look. There's another question come.
Yes, lots more. So, how a leadership role will complete a cycle and the leader realize he has achieved as a leader?
Oh,
This
excellent
question is from Prasad. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is an excellent question. I always say that when you enter an ecosystem, first there is always the leader before you, and obviously everybody's going to compare you with the previous leader. The question is, you enter a relatively hostile ecosystem or a frightened ecosystem if the previous leader was not a good leader. If he was a great leader, then you have very big shoes to fill. You enter that space with great stress. And as time progresses, you start creating order, hopefully. You created harmony. And a point will come where you'll realize the system works without you. And that's when you know that you've done your job as a leader. When they are not dependent on you, but you are dependable, but they are not dependent on you. In the beginning, they're all dependent on you. You're the new guy. You're going to shake up the system. Things are going to change. Jobs will go. Jobs will be reorganized. Reporting structures will change. Comfort zones will change. So they all look at you terrified. And then gradually you create an ecosystem. And depending on your personality, you create more dependence. Some people believe leadership is creating more and more dependence. It's very common in family businesses. Family businesses, unfortunately, survive on the fact that the leader is the person on whom everybody depends. But a good, healthy relationship in an organization is where you render yourself more and more independent. And people start managing the problems on their own. Of course, you have your checks and balances. You know exactly what is going on. You know everything what's going on. But you see the number of phone calls and the crisis calls have reduced. You see the number of the customers gradually getting happier and happier. The indexes are changing because you're measuring yourself. You're doing darshan and saying that, okay, I got 20 calls yesterday. Today I'm getting 18 calls. And then gradually I'm getting 1 or 2 calls. And they're valid calls. These calls can only be taken by me and nobody else. And therefore the ecosystem has become great. It's time to move on. Expiry date is approaching. If I don't shake up the system will shake up for me. And that's how I think you measure leadership progression over time. It takes about, roughly, people have calculated this as a 3-year cycle. If the ecosystem is fairly stable. If it's an unstable ecosystem, then it can take more than 3 years.
Thank you, Devdutt. I personally feel that because as part of the COVID helpline, or the number of calls, the important calls keep reducing, and we will be happy for the number of calls getting reduced, especially on this particular factor. So yeah, totally could relate it. So, okay, a question from Ganesh. What is going to be the new normal? So we all know what is new normals, but now post-pandemic, how is it going to be and how are we going to face it?
I think the one big change is the work-life balance will take a new definition. I think that's what people are going to re-ask, because now we have got used to having lovely breakfasts at home. And now we are not going to take the dabba and run to catch the train or the bus or the traffic jam. That's not going to happen. I'm going to ask myself, hey, why am I actually going to meet people? Why do I need physical people around me? And there'll be 2 types of leaders. One who can't function without people around them. And there'll be other group of leaders who just love the fact that they don't have to meet people and they're very happy doing things online. And I think those 2 extremes will have to be addressed. The very people-driven jobs and people. There are jobs that demand people engagement, like sales, for example, and presentations to clients, but they'll also, and crisis management. And there are people who like people, the people who like to meet people, who get energized by people, You have to factor in these two spaces. And the other extreme, who have now, you've got a 14-month experience, 18-month experience of working from home, and things have been pretty good, especially in the IT sector. I've seen, at least I know my friends and all who are doing pretty well, and life has been very good and more productive. Because really, there is no time you switch off. You're working all the time. Saturday, Sunday, every day is working time. So those are the things that will shift in the post-pandemic world, I feel. Schools will change, the way the schools function. I think the online space has now become a part of so integral as never before. And I think we'll have to redefine those things.
Thanks. Can you brief a bit more on I am and I have?
This is when you understand, so I do a lot of work on Indian approach to management, as you are aware of, as was mentioned in the introduction, and it's been refined. The book I wrote was 10 years ago. It's called Business Sutra, but I refined it further, and I divide all work into 3 groups. One is called having, the other is called doing, and the third is called being. So I have something, I am something, I do something. So these are the 3 words that I keep using. I have, I am, and I do. Now, if you can actually divide everything in your life into these 3 things. Who am I? What do I have? And what do I do? Now, when you look at, let's say we go to meet a client, right? Let's look at a practical business example. Do you look at the person in front of you, or do you look at his designation and the power and his decision-making abilities? We really don't care for the person in front of us, right? We are really looking at his designation. We are looking at, okay, is the VP or not senior VP? Is he going to take the decision, or is he just a face of the company? Who is going to take the decision? So you are looking at what he has, the power that he has, the capability that he has. But there is also the person that you have to talk to, who he is. Because only he's the door through which you will enter the organization in the larger ecosystem. And therefore, once you separate the I am and you have, it helps you understand how to deal with people. Or for that matter, let's say you're taking an interview of someone. You get a resume. The resume tells you everything that he has. I mean, you have to test whether that's true or not, whether he's lying or not. So you'll have your fact check. So it tells you his age, we know about where did he work, what experience does he have, what he has studied, all that he has. His salary, marital status, whatever is allowed to be asked. Nowadays, HR has very strict rules about what you can ask and what you can't ask. But you get what you have. He can't tell you who he is. The interview is where you figure out who he is. You figure out his hunger, his fear, and his quest for meaning. These are the 3 things that you find out. You figure out where does he see himself in the larger scheme. What that biodata, curriculum vitae cannot tell you is only possible in an interview. So interview is where you get the I am. What you put, or shadi.com, right? You put shadi.com, you can only put what you have. You can't put who you are. That is why you go and meet the person. You go on a date, you figure out, you have a conversation. Because that is where ultimately you know that a good relationship is on what I am, not on what I have. So that's how you sort of figure it out.
Very well said. Yes, Jaya, you wanted to pose the question. Please go ahead.
Hi, wonderful, fascinating session. I wanted to explore a little bit more about the transition from Chakravarti to Tankara.
Okay.
Is it simply by having a vision that you become a Tankara, or you need a lot of, in real life, you need have a lot more hurdles? You need external validation. Somebody needs to understand that you do have the vision. You need opportunities to exhibit that vision. You need to do a lot more before you become the Tankara. So what do you kind of like, can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So there are 2 parts to this question. One is how I imagine myself, and the second is how the organization imagines me.
Exactly.
Right. So it's not a function of designation. It doesn't mean that when I move from being an executive to a manager, necessarily I'm a Chakravarti. Because I have seen so many managers who are really task-oriented people, and they're still task-oriented. They're not able to see systems. They're not able to see, okay, what is the role of the HR, and what, one of the things when I hear someone say, I don't see what the HR is doing, or I don't see what the finance is doing, or I don't see what this team is doing. And I'm like, you know what? You don't understand the ecosystem. In fact, I advise a lot of young people to become EAs, because I say when you become an EA temporarily with the CEO, even if for 6 months, you get to understand the blueprint of the company and you understand how the company imagines itself. That is what a Chakravarti does. He sees the whole ecosystem and understands, and that requires a skill set. And some people are natural at it, some people have to work at it. Again, Tirthankara doesn't mean because you are at the board of directors, you are automatically a Tirthankara. You can still be a Vasudeva at that level, still task-oriented and target-oriented. Because I've met CEOs, as I said, who still don't understand balance sheets, but have become, because they were superb sales guys, they rose up the ladder, and they have become CEOs. And I look at them and I'm like, vision not there. And it's very popular in family businesses. Family businesses love such people and they pull them up because the decisions are taken by the family or the head of the family. Yeah. But a Tirthankara is someone who has a natural understanding of, he understands, he sees people as more than belonging to the ecosystem. And that is a trait that you see in a lot of people. And we can develop it. It's not that you can't develop it. It's just that it's not part of MBA courses. Because MBA courses are all about goal orientation, achieve this goal. We are not paying attention to humans. We're paying attention to employees, shareholders, customers. We're never looking at humans. And therefore we use things like, when we talk about pay parity, these are conversations that you're being forced to look at humans. Really this has to be discussed. These things should have been just normal if you looked at people generally and you understood what is going on, the class divides, the gender divides, the language divides. The fact that we have to talk about them in seminars reveals that the Tirthankara thinking is missing. Mm-hmm. And that's what we are talking about. Some people use words like EQ. Yeah. They use these words, but they use it in a very crude way, and I feel in a rather manipulative way. It is the larger ecosystem, because somebody has to go home. I remember when I was talking to someone who was working in a 5-star hotel, and we were having this workshop, young boys and girls. So I asked them, where do you stay? And I said, okay, let's visualize your journey from morning, and you come here, and they have to be in this 5-star hotel. They have to be this fabulously fit all day long. And I said, how long do you work? 18 hours, 16 hours. And at the 18th hour, they have to look as fresh as in the first hour. Now, this conversation, this visualization, which I did with them, was what Tirthankara would do intuitively. He would have figured it out. Because it's not about task, it is not about process, it's not about that anymore. It's that difficult thing. And that is why, if you're in Karnataka, you must go to Mangalore. Around Mangalore, there are these basadis. And you find these beautiful images of the Tirthankara as a concept. It's not a religious idea. I'm looking at it as a concept, a 360-degree view. It's called Chaturmukhas. Which is what, it has nothing to do with which position you are in the hierarchy. Let me clarify that. It is more it would be great if bosses had it. And in a good organization, bosses do have it.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Thank you, Devdutt. I believe that answered your question, Jaya. Yeah. I think Chandra, you are in pipeline. You have a question. Please go ahead. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Divya. And wonderful presentation, Mr. Devdutt. I've been able to relate to many things that you said. And I also listened to a lot of scriptural discourses and other things. Wonderful connect. I think that's the way to, understand what you need to do in a corporate. I believe in that. So, like you said, a leader should be dispensable. Now that's when you realize you are a leader. And I just wanted to hear from you. Is it not also a leader's responsibility to groom other leaders? Because when you leave, you don't want to leave a vacuum, right? You may not be dispensable. Someone who can occupy your shoes and can deliver at that level. So can we hear a little more from you about that?
So when we use the word, I am dispensable. So that's a very good word to remember. And let's look at the Ashrama module, which is used in scriptures and storytelling. They talk about first 25 years, you are a brahmacharya, then 25 years, you are a grahastha, then 25 years, you're a vanaprastha, and 25 years, you're a sannyasa. So the 25 years, you're a student, and 25 years, you're a householder. Then it becomes a little blurry. We don't really know what it means. Vanaprastha, living in the forest, and then becoming a hermit. But in a corporate ecosystem, it's very simple to understand. The first phase is when you are preparing for your role. Your efficiency levels are not great. Your not effectiveness levels are not great. Then comes the grahastha phase where your efficiency and effectiveness is fantastic. You perform very well. After some time, it is like, okay, now the system survives without me. You are now aware of your death, that I can be dispensable. But you now go into Vanaprastha stage where you are preparing the next generation. That's the meaning of the Vanaprastha. That is what Vishwamitra is doing to Ram when he takes him to the forest and says, come, I will take you to the forest. And if you look carefully at Ramayana, Ram is asked to do two things when Vishwamitra takes him to the forest. The first thing he does, he is telling, you have to help Ahalya come out of a quagmire. So the ability to enable and help people in supposedly helpless situations is one thing that a king does. So that's a training happening. The second is he tells him to kill Tadaka. So at one side, extreme compassion, on another side, extreme ruthlessness. And it's a training program that Ram is going through. That is Vanaprastha. Only when Vishwamitra completes that is he able to become a sannyasi. Only then can you move either to your next job or your next assignment, because you have created the next king. And that is ideally the situation, and it usually happens informally. A good organization would do it formally, but I have been part of some organization. I always check when I enter an organization talent management pipeline. And I keep saying it happens right from the doorkeeper, because the doorkeeper, unless you think the doorkeeper is going to be doorkeeper forever, or the housekeeping staff, or the kitchen staff, or every person, if you have a life cycle in your head, then you know how to manage them. And I think that is a simple model that can be used by organizations.
If I may just add one thing to that, if it really has to be like a blockchain, you need to ensure that it happens at every level below you.
Absolutely.
Because magically it will not happen the next day after the next day goes. So it's something which is a process which happens throughout. So the manager, assistant manager, and one below him, everyone is grooming somebody below him. And that has to be taught from day one, if I may say that.
Yeah, so what you have said is a very interesting idea. In a pyramidal structure, I give two advice. Look at the KPI, your own KPI, but look at the KRA of n-1. So you focus on your task, but what we say, the results of the action is not happening at your level. You have to do n-1 or n-2 is where the actual results are happening.
Absolutely.
So you have to figure what happens many a times we focus on our KRA and our ecosystem, forgetting that the team who is benefiting from you is perhaps not paying it forward.
Correct.
That is a very big challenge. It's the second level of delegation, which is, as you know, a very tough thing. The second level of delegation is, one is to delegate, like me giving the task to you, but the ability for that person to give it to the next level is a challenge by itself.
So it's a chain of leadership we're talking about. Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Last couple of questions, Deep, that we do have, in the queue.
Can we take two more?
So yeah. Is that okay? Okay. So how relevant is the nobility of intent versus action in the corporate leadership? This is from Balaji. Yes.
In the corporate world, unfortunately, nobody can see your intent. They can only see your action. And therefore, modern management, which is Western management, focuses on behavior, measurable behavior. They don't really care for belief. I was a chief belief officer with Future Group. And one of the things I was kept talking is that I cannot see your belief system. I can only see your action. Unfortunately, the Western model is designed around action. And therefore, many of times they use words like authentic and inauthentic. These words are used a lot because the one big challenge, and it's the holy grail of management, is that I can't see invisible intentions. And I cannot see it. Even if my intention is good or bad, I don't know. And that is how the Ramayana and Mahabharata is designed, right? The difference between Ravana and Duryodhana, the two villains of Ramayana and Mahabharata, is Ravana openly breaks the law, and therefore you know he's broken the law. Duryodhana never breaks the law, but his intent is not in the right place. So he seems to be following the law like a clever politician, but he knows he's manipulating the system to get his way, and you can't catch him. And that is the weakness of the current institutional model. You can't do anything about it. You can give lectures about it and all that. And that's where darshan plays a very important role. It is my darshan that enables me to catch the intent of a person. But that's so subjective that if you are in front of a panel who is sort of judging you, it becomes very difficult to figure out, even if one person has figured it out, it's like a jury sitting in front of you and to decide. Intent is a challenge. It remains a challenge.
Thank you. The last question is from Subbu. In Gurukula type of education, all are expected to go and get bhiksha, get food from every house and bring it to Guru's house. And the Guru's wife will distribute to all. The main learning here is first you will shed your ego by getting the food, divide and eat and lead a normal life. So that's the main learning. So that's what he would like to again reshare.
That's a comment. That's not a question.
Yeah, that's a comment, right? Yeah. So the question we have here is, how do we manage matrix reporting stakeholder? Do we have any ideas in mythology, and how will be an individual success focus areas, for mutual benefits?
The matrix is a huge challenge, and when you go to puja room, a traditional puja room, and I'm assuming that some people, if you can't understand, I apologize. I ask your colleagues who don't understand. In a puja room in India, you have many deities, right? So you will have many deities, and each one has to be managed. So you have a Ishta Devata, personal god, a Graha Devata, a household god, a Kula Devata, family god, a Grama Devata, village god. That's a matrix organization. You have to deal with various devatas. Each devata wants his offering, which will be different. So somebody needs tulsi leaves, and somebody needs bale leaf, and somebody needs a marigold flower, somebody needs a lotus flower, somebody will be worshipped on Monday, somebody will be worshipped on Tuesday. And so you're always on your feet because you have to deal with every god's naivedya is different. Because if you upset even one of the gods, the ecosystem gets disturbed. And I think the puja room model is a very simple way to understand the matrix structure, because it means you have to do darshan of each god, and every time you talk to one god, you must make them feel they're the most important god in the room. And that's what Vedas teach us. If you read the Vedic poetry, when they are worshipping Agni, he'll say, Agni Vishwadeha, you are the greatest god in the world. And when they start worshipping Indra, they'll say, oh, you are the greatest god in the world. Without you, the world won't function. And when they worship Varuna, they will say, oh, you are the greatest god in the world. And they are true at that time, because each one matters in the ecosystem. And I think that's how you handle a matrix organization, because you don't know who is going to influence your ratings ultimately. And therefore, everyone has to get his darshan, everybody has to get the naivedya, and hopefully you will get good prasad from each one of them.
Thank you so much, Devdutt. I'm sure that was a very insightful session, and a lot of takeaways we had. It was a very beneficiary session for our BCTs today, and we're extremely glad that this correlated with our 22nd year of completion, and we are stepping into 23rd year for us. So I would request Rema to share a vote of thanks and bring the curtain down.
Sure. Good evening and good morning to one and all. I take this opportunity to wish all of you all a very happy 22nd anniversary of BCT. Vote of thanks. Words are really falling short to express our sincere gratitude to you, Dr. Patnaik. The thoughts, the concepts you have shared with us is amazing, enthralling, engaging. And I'm sure each one of us who listen to you are going to go back and mull over the concepts you so lucidly, like you just narrated it all. And we are going to do some serious introspections as well, whether we are a sun or some other planet we are, or whether we are, the Noah who's building the ark, or the LSD, I really like that. So, or the three concepts, whether it is Vasudeva or, Chakravarti or Tirthangara, which path we are in, and so many more concepts you just, addressed during the Q&A sessions. Thank you very, very much from all of us in BCT for this amazing session. Time was, sort of, we thought the time was very short. We would have loved to hear more from you.
Thank you,
I'm sure, some other occasions will soon come. Let me also take this opportunity to thank our beloved CEO and co-founder of BCT, Mr. Durga Prasad, for sponsoring these programs and really giving us this idea to pursue this, direction of bringing in speakers like you, renowned speakers like you, and improve our, BCTN's vision about life as such, and also about, how we can function together as a better organization. Thank you very much, DP, in absentia, and the leadership team of BCT for forever supporting any such innovative, lines which we take up, and being there. Last but not the least, the marketing team who has helped us in putting this out together, and my own team, HR team, for facilitating this, and all of us. Thank you once again, Dr. Patnaik. It was our honor and a privilege to have listened to you. You indeed has given us a very thought-provoking session. I'm sure each one of us have benefited from this. Thank you very much for all the participants too.